They say he was born before his time. A small, fragile child, his skin pale as the inside of a shell, his breath barely there. His mother, afraid he would not survive, wrapped him in her sacred hair and cast him into the sea. The waves swallowed him whole, but the ocean did not take his life. It gave him one. The currents carried him to the shore, where the gods of the deep found the tiny child. They saw a spark within him, a glimmer that was neither mortal nor divine, but something in between. So they took him in, raised him, and taught him the secrets of the world. He learned how to change his form into a bird, a worm, a gust of wind. He learned to speak with fire, to command the tides, and to twist the rules that bound gods and men. When he returned to his people years later, he was not a child anymore. He was Maui, son of both sea and sky, clever, daring, and utterly fearless. Maui had many brothers, strong men who fished the ocean every day. But they did not trust him. They called him a trickster, and they weren't wrong. One dawn, they rose quietly and set out in their canoe, leaving Maui behind. But Maui had other plans. He hid beneath the floorboards of their boat, silent as a shadow. When they were far from shore, he rose and grinned. "You didn't think you could leave me behind, did you?" The brothers scowled, but Maui's charm was stronger than their anger. He took from his belt a shining fishhook carved from the jawbone of an ancestor, a hook of divine power called Manai Akalani. He baited it not with fish, but with a chant, words that called to the depths of the world. The ocean stirred. The line went taut. Something immense was pulling back. "Row!" Maui shouted. His brothers dug their paddles into the waves, their arms trembling. From below came the grinding roar of stone against stone, and the sea frothed like boiling water. Up from the depths rose cliffs and valleys, ridges and forests, whole islands torn from the ocean floor. The brothers, astonished, looked around them at the vast land that now surrounded their canoe. But Maui's eyes burned with triumph. He had fished up a world. And thus the islands of Polynesia were born, lifted by the hook of Maui, the demigod who pulled the earth itself from the sea. The people rejoiced in their new home, but life was still hard. The days were too short. The sun raced across the sky like a thief, leaving only a few hours of light. Farmers could not plant, hunters could not track, mothers could not cook before darkness fell. Maui watched this and grew angry. He decided he would tame the sun. He traveled east with his brothers to the edge of the world, where the sun crawled out from its pit each morning. They gathered long ropes woven from the sacred hair of Maui's mother and prepared a snare among the rocks. When dawn came, the horizon blazed, and from the pit rose the sun, fierce and furious, its flames scorching the earth. But Maui's ropes flew through the air, binding its fiery limbs. The sun screamed in rage, thrashing against its bonds, spitting fire and ash. But Maui held tight and struck the sun with his weapon, the enchanted jawbone of his ancestor. "Move more slowly," Maui commanded. "Let the people live in light." The sun writhed, its brilliance dimming under his blows. Finally, beaten and humbled, it agreed. From that day, it traveled more gently across the heavens, and the world was filled with longer days and gentler light. But the demigod's hunger for discovery never ended. One night, when the fire in the village died out, the people were helpless. No one remembered how to make it again. Maui, ever curious, said, "I will find where fire comes from." He journeyed through rain and wind, across mountains and forests, until he reached the home of Mahiuika, the goddess of fire. Her body glowed like embers, her hair a crown of flame. When she saw Maui, she asked, "What do you seek, child of men?" "I seek fire," Maui said boldly. With a long sigh, Mahiuika plucked one of her fingernails and handed it to him, and from that nail a brilliant fire sprang to life. "Use it wisely," she warned. But Maui, being Maui, wanted to see what would happen if he took more. He returned again and again, asking for another nail, then another, until her hands were almost bare. When she realized his trickery, Mahiuika's fury burned brighter than the volcanoes. She hurled her last spark at Maui, and the world erupted in flame. Forests ignited, rivers boiled, the air turned red. Desperate, Maui called to the gods of rain. Thunder cracked, lightning flashed, and torrents fell upon the world. The fire died, leaving behind blackened earth, and a single ember hidden in the heart of wood. From that ember, humanity learned to make fire again by striking sticks together, calling out the fire that slept within. Maui had stolen another gift from the divine, though not without cost. In the earliest days, the sky pressed so close to the earth that men could not stand upright. The air was heavy and dim. The people crawled like insects through the shadows. Maui looked at them and said, "This will not do." He planted his feet firmly on the ground and pushed upward with all his might. The sky groaned and resisted, but Maui chanted words of power, words that bent the universe to his will. With one last heave, he lifted the heavens high above the mountains, freeing the winds, freeing the stars. The world filled with space and light, and for the first time, mankind could stand tall beneath the sky. But there was one thing Maui could not change, one injustice that even his power could not undo: death. He saw his friends grow old. He watched chiefs die. He saw children buried before their time, and he said, "Why must it be this way? Why should death have the final word?" He turned his eyes to Hine Nui Tepo, the goddess of the underworld, the guardian of the dead, vast and terrible, with eyes like fire and obsidian teeth that could shatter bone. Maui declared, "I will enter her body and emerge from her mouth. When I do, death will be destroyed, and men shall live forever." His companions, the small forest birds, followed him, watching anxiously. While the goddess slept, Maui transformed into a worm and began to crawl between her thighs. He was almost halfway through when the little piwaiwaka, a curious bird with a fan-shaped tail, began to laugh. It laughed at the absurdity of it all, a demigod trying to crawl through death itself. The sound echoed across the underworld. Hine Nui Tepo awoke. With a single motion, she clenched her thighs together, and Maui, the great trickster, the hero of men, was crushed to death. The earth shuddered, the sky dimmed, and death remained unconquered. They say that when Maui died, the world wept, not because he was gone, but because he had dared to try. For though he failed, his courage gave meaning to mortality. He had stolen fire, slowed the sun, lifted the sky, and created the islands themselves. He had challenged the gods, and for a time he had won. And though death defeated him, his story lived on, whispered by fishermen before dawn, chanted by elders at dusk, carried in the wind that moves across the Pacific. In every island where the waves break against black rock and the stars shimmer above the palms, his name is remembered. Maui, the trickster, the hero, the maker of worlds. He taught humankind that progress is born from rebellion, that the greatest power is not in obedience but in curiosity, and that sometimes, even in failure, we can touch the divine.